Now, I know you've probably heard the news that Elon is pulling out of the Twitter acquisition. He doesn't want to buy Twitter anymore. And there's been a lot of content created on this subject. I'm sure you've already watched numerous videos on it or seen it in the news, and I'm not going to rehash what you already know. So in this video, you're going to learn something new about this deal because frankly, a lot of people expressing their opinions on the subject are playing the role of armchair lawyer, armchair merger and acquisition specialist. Most people don't have a clue about how these deals work, and neither do I. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a merger and acquisition specialist. And so what I plan on doing is instead of just sharing my naive opinion on the subject, I'm going to be referencing someone who happens to be a specialist on the subject. Matt Levine is a merger and acquisition specialist who worked at Wachtell and Lipton, the best firm in the country for merger and acquisitions. So if there's anyone's opinion on the subject that actually has some grounding to it, some experience along with his opinion on this merger and acquisition of Elon Musk wanting to buy Twitter, then changing his mind, bringing up reasons to get out of the deal, it would be this guy. And I want to go through this article that he just released this morning and highlight some of the things that he brings up that I think a lot of people are missing. Let's go ahead and jump in to this debacle that Elon Musk has got himself into. He first starts off by referencing right here, he quotes, the most important part of the letter that Elon Musk just filed to the SEC, trying to back out of this deal. Twitter has made, quote, misleading representations over the number of spam bots on the social network and hasn't complied with its contractual obligations to provide information about how to assess and how prevalent the bots are. Musk's representative said Friday in a letter to Twitter as part of the regulatory filings. So this is what Musk's lawyers sent to Twitter. Twitter has said, made misleading representations, and they're not providing us with this information. Now, this is where Matt Levine gives his opinion on the subject. He says Ringler offers 3 pretexts for why Musk should be allowed out of the deal. The first pretext, Twitter has been lying about bots. For at least 8 years, Twitter has said in its SEC filings that it estimates that fewer than 5% of its monetizable daily active users are false or spam accounts. So Twitter's saying less than 5% of our daily active monetizable users are bots. And in the merger agreement, it represents that its SEC filings are accurate. So Twitter's standing by these filings where they say that less than 5% of monetizable daily active users are bots. Ringler says, this is the lawyers representing Musk, Ringler says that, quote, it appears that Twitter is dramatically understating the proportion of spam and false accounts represented in its monetizable daily active user count. This is where Matt Levine interjects his opinion again. There is not a whisper of evidence for this claim, not a hint that there might be evidence, no acknowledgement that a reasonable reader of this letter might want to see evidence. The only basis for this claim is, quote, preliminary analysis by Mr. Musk's advisors of the information provided by Twitter to date causes Mr. Musk to strongly believe that the proportion of false and spam accounts included in the reported MDAU count is wildly higher than that 5%. Notice how Ringler does not say that the analysis shows that the bots are wildly higher than 5% of the MDAUs. That would be a factual claim. I suspect Musk's advisors know it's false. They make only subjective claims. Remember, Musk strongly believes, that is opinion. There is no fact in that. He believes something. They make only subjective claim that Musk strongly believes it. I don't even believe that he believes it, but that's harder to disprove. So Matt Levine is saying he doesn't even think that Musk believes over 5% of Twitter's monetizable daily active users are bots. He thinks the only reason he's making this claim is just to get out of the deal. But notice how in Musk's actual filings, he can't factually say that this is false. He has to just say that he strongly believes it. The bot thing, man, I don't know. We've talked about this before. Back before the market crash, back before he was pretending, he being Musk, pretending he wanted to buy Twitter, Musk was pretending that he wanted to buy Twitter in order to clean up the bot problem. Now, I of course agree with Matt Levine here. I remember when Elon was first talking about buying Twitter, one of the things he was aware of and wanting to solve to increase the value proposition of Twitter was the bot problem. But now he's pretending to want to get out of the deal because of that very problem. It is tiresome to pretend to take this seriously, so let's not. People, if you think that Elon Musk is really wanting to get out of this deal because he suddenly found out about a bot problem, you're mistaken. You have convinced yourself to believe everything that Elon Musk feeds you. This is not the reason he wants out of the deal. The original reason he wanted to buy the company was to solve the bot problem. But as a legal matter, is this pretext good enough to get him out of the deal? Well, look, if Musk can prove that in fact Twitter has been running a years-long fraud on its shareholders and advisors, that it has knowingly been massively understating the number of bot accounts in order to trick companies into buying Twitter ads and shareholders into buying Twitter stock, then sure, maybe that will get him out of the deal. Twitter does represent in the merger agreement that its SEC filings are correct. So that's what Twitter's saying. And the SEC filings do say that Twitter estimates that bots are under 5% of monetizable daily active users. Though they even caveat this saying, quote, "This estimate is based on the internal review of a sample of accounts, and we apply significant judgment in making this determination." Now, if Twitter were simply lying, if they actually knew that bots were really 75% of monetizable daily active users, then I suppose the rep would be false. Again, there is absolutely no evidence for this. That's what Elon Musk followers, people that just loyally follow everything he says, need to understand. There is no evidence presented by either Elon Musk or Twitter that they've been dishonest in any part of this. Ringler's letter makes it fairly clear that Musk is never going to offer evidence for it. Twitter has publicly and persuasively defended its methodology, and third-party analysis that are sympathetic to Musk nonetheless seem to support Twitter's numbers. But if you just pretend that Musk can somehow prove that Twitter is lying, then sure fine, the representation would be false. So this is just part one. To summarize so far, just what we have so far, Elon Musk's legal team has presented no evidence to state anything Twitter has said is actually false. They're just saying they think it is. That's not factual. And their lawyers have been very careful to articulate in their writing no factual claims, only believing, only thinking that something might be the case. They've made no factual claims because they don't have any evidence, and they're likely not going to present any evidence. And even people that are third party, that have done analysis on Twitter's methodology, have backed what Twitter's saying over Elon Musk. So if you think there's any evidence to the daily active users and Elon Musk saying that this is a problem, he has no evidence of it. That's what Elon Musk followers need to understand just in part one. But this gets even more difficult for Elon Musk. Let's move on to part two. Elon Musk has no evidence that Twitter misrepresented anything in any report. His only claim is that he believes it to be the case without presenting any factual evidence. But Levine here says, even so, even if he did have evidence that Twitter misrepresented their daily active users, Musk cannot get out of the deal just because of one of Twitter's representations is false. So the people saying that, oh, this is a good reason, it's a totally valid reason, it's still not enough to get him out of this deal. He still has to close the deal unless the representation is false and it would have a, quote, material adverse effect on Twitter. This is famously underdefined term, but it generally needs to be pretty catastrophic. So the bar for meeting this standard is pretty high. For example, if the bots are 6% instead of 5% of the monetizable daily active users, whatever, that's not going to be enough. Now, if the bots are 75%, right, dramatically more, if most users are bots and Twitter has been knowingly misleading its advertisers and Musk can expose that scam, advertisers flee and Twitter faces legal trouble for its fraud, then sure, material adverse effect, that bar is achieved. He could get out of the deal then. However, there is no evidence for this at all, despite Musk's months of looking for it. He's been searching for evidence to get out of this deal and he can't find any. Also, it's obviously untrue. That's basic common sense. The majority of users on Twitter are not bots. And the estimates of 5%, in my experience, having 15,000 followers on Twitter, I think it's pretty accurate. I think it's less than 5%. Companies advertise on Twitter because it sells products. People use Twitter because other non-bot people use Twitter. So it is a useful and enjoyable social network. Elon Musk, who has far more interactions with bots than most Twitter users, is addicted to Twitter because it is full of real people. Would Elon Musk be using the service if it was really just full of bots? Would that be something that he would enjoy using? Probably not. He's using it because it's full of real people. The pretense that Elon Musk has somehow exposed a secret truth that nobody uses Twitter except himself and some spam bots is just absurd. But we have to keep talking about it. It's so stupid. This is the problem I have with it. Elon Musk has a lot of loyal fans because of the things that he's accomplished, but sometimes they become so ingrained in everything he does that they can't even look at one subject objectively. The claims that he's making about Twitter and the bots are obviously untrue, and Elon Musk himself can provide no evidence to fit those claims. So out of the first two legal pretexts to Elon Musk trying to back out of this deal, the first one's very weak. Saying that Twitter lied and they committed fraud about their number of bots on their platform without any evidence is a very weak pretext. That's not going to work. The second one has better legal standing, and Elon Musk and his lawyers probably know that, so that's what they're really diving into. The strategy here is for Elon to keep requesting more and more data, to just bury Twitter in data requests, and hopefully they're not able to keep up with all these data requests. Because if they can't keep up with them, he can say, hey, you didn't fulfill your obligation. We requested all this information, you can't provide it. So Elon Musk doing this legal strategy of just requesting more and more data from Twitter is a much better legal strategy than trying to claim without any evidence that they're committing fraud. Ringler's letter makes it pretty clear that's what Musk is up to. He'd ask for information about bots, they'd give it to him, and he'd ask for more. And he'd keep trying to get information that he could use to undermine Twitter's SEC reports. He buried Twitter in an avalanche of demand of data. So he's trying to just bury them in requests for data that Twitter's trying to keep up for and keep providing, but they keep asking for more and more. Here's just a few examples. Mr. Musk reiterated his request for the access to sample set used in calculations performed, as well as any related report or analysis to support Twitter's representation that fewer than 5% of its daily active users are spam or false accounts. To that end, Mr. Musk requested Twitter provide daily measures of daily active users for the previous 8 quarters throughout the present. This information is a derivative of the information Mr. Musk first sought in section 1.01 of May 19's diligence request list. Although Twitter has provided certain summary data regarding the daily active user calculation, Twitter has not provided the complete daily measures as requested. So Elon Musk's team is requesting information, they're getting that information, and then they're requesting very similar derivatives of the information to just bury them in more information requests. Musk has also asked for a random assortment of other information from Twitter, including, hilariously, its investment bankers' financial models for the fairness opinion. Musk requested on June 17th a variety of board materials, including a working bottoms-up financial model for 2022, a budget for 2022, an updated draft plan of a budget, and a working copy of Goldman Sachs' valuation model underlying its fairness opinion. Twitter has provided only a PDF copy of Goldman Sachs' final board presentation. So Elon Musk's legal team is saying, we want this data, and this data, and this data that's even unrelated, and we want a derivative of this data, and even more of it, hoping that Twitter missteps and they don't provide some data that Elon Musk wants, and then he can say, I gotcha. You didn't provide the data I want. Now I have legal means to back out of this deal. That is the strategy here. The question is, will this strategy work? Well, like I said, it's better than the one about the bots. It still strikes me as pretty implausible. Just from reading Ringler's own letter, you can tell that Twitter has done a lot to give Musk the information he reasonably requires, and that Musk keeps coming up with increasingly baroque requests. It's hard to imagine a judge sympathizing with Musk here. Another important thing to highlight on this topic of these data requests and him using this pretext to back out of the deal is the covenant does not actually say, quote, you have to give Musk any information he asks for. It says, for any reasonable business purpose related to the consummation of the transaction contemplated by this agreement. So even this data request covenant is very specific, and Elon Musk's requests are likely outside of the scope that it gives. And then finally, Matt Levine says that this is uncharted territory. Again, he is an expert in this field. He works in merger and acquisitions. He knows about this. He's seen a lot of these deals and have observed them from a legal standpoint. And he says, I'm not aware of any merger agreement that has ever been terminated for a breach of an information covenant. It is generally pretty easy to comply with an information covenant. Just give the buyer the information they want, and buyers don't generally use it as a way to harass sellers and create an excuse for walking away. So Elon Musk is again walking down a path that no one else has walked. He's doing something completely new that nobody else has done. He's trying to end this agreement by saying that Twitter has violated the information covenant, something that someone that works in this field has said they have never seen happen before. So in summary so far, first pretext, Twitter has been lying and committing fraud to the SEC, even though we don't have any evidence. That's a pretty weak one. The second one, we had an agreement that you have to provide information, and we're giving you a barrage of unrelated requests that are not really anything we need to close this deal, but we want this information as an excuse to walk out of this deal. That one is a little bit more likely, but still it's uncharted territory. He's never seen this happen. It's time to move on to the third and final pretext for Elon Musk wanting to walk out of this deal. It's another covenant. This one is that it uses its commercially reasonable effort to conduct business of the company and its subsidiaries in the ordinary course of business. So during this merger and takeover by Elon Musk, Twitter has to just run the business as normal. They can't try to sabotage their business to make Elon Musk back out of the deal. And Elon Musk is claiming as part of this transaction that people are quitting and Twitter is responsible for this. It's not the normal course of business. In the letter, Ringler says Twitter's conduct in firing two key high-ranking employees, its revenue product lead and the general manager of consumer, as well as announcing on July 7th that it was laying off a third of its talent acquisition team, implicates the ordinary course provision. Twitter has also instituted a general hiring freeze, which extends even to reconsideration of outstanding job offers. Moreover, 3 executives have resigned from Twitter since the merger agreement was signed: the head of data science, the vice president of Twitter service, and the vice president of product management for health, conversation, and growth. The company has not received parents' consent for changes in conduct of its business, including for specific changes listed above. So Elon Musk is saying, I want out of this deal because Twitter is no longer running their business as usual. That violates a covenant because they're firing employees and they're doing a hiring freeze. When he himself literally said a couple months ago that we're doing a hiring freeze and we're firing some employees because he has a super bad feeling about the economy. When I look at this and I think, what will a judge think of these claims that Elon Musk can get out of this deal because Twitter fired some employees? There's a chance the judge could side with Elon Musk on this, but a lot of tech companies have been firing employees. That's pretty common business. So in my opinion, I think it's unlikely that a judge agrees with Elon Musk that they're not running their business as usual. They're sabotaging the company or doing things damaging to the company that violate this covenant. Now, Levine says here that if a court finds Twitter, that is, if a judge concludes that Musk's pretexts are not good enough for him to get out of the deal, then there are 2 possible outcomes, and they are very different. Musk might have to pay a $1 billion reversal termination fee for unjustifiably walking away from the deal, or the court might order specific performance, meaning that Musk would have to fund his entire $33.5 billion equity commitment to buy Twitter. The judge can force him to buy the company at the agreed price. So those are the 3 legal pretexts that Elon Musk is using to get out of this deal. Will the judge accept it? What will the outcome be? Will they decide in favor of Elon Musk or Twitter? We're going to find out. Either way, I wanted to give this little update because I feel like it's far more informational and actually looking at the facts than people just voicing their opinion. So I hope you enjoyed this deeper look. If you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next